I don't know if you've gleaned already from this introduction that I'm on my A game because I did my independent study this week, Kurt. My NFL Network issued tablet. I hit it. I did the required studying. That's my setup for what'd you think of that?
I was going to say you have required a required amount of time you have to study.
I guess so.
Okay, all right.
I need to check the fine print. That's my way of getting in and ask you what'd you think of all that. What'd you think of all that, Kurt?
Man, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think it's, I think that's something that really should be between the organization and the player. I mean, obviously, there was something there that the Cardinals felt they needed to have that clause in the contract. And Kyler obviously had no problem signing that part of the contract. If all I would have said is if somebody came to me and said, hey, we're going to put this clause in your contract, I'd have signed it as well because it's like, okay, I mean, I do way more than that anyway, so I'll sign whatever clause they want. I think the question more is why did the Cardinals feel there was a need for that? But I thought Kyler made really, some good points yesterday, but specifically that there's a lot of different ways to prepare for getting ready for a game. And it's not just film study. It's not just watching your opponent's film. I talk to quarterbacks all the time about knowing who they are as a quarterback because your preparation should be designed around who you are. I think about Peyton Manning, and I don't even know the answer to how much film Peyton watched, but so much of what he did was based off of what the defense did. If they were going to do this, he was going to change the play to that. I was a guy that was less dictated, before the snap by what a defense did, and I played more after the snap. So much of my preparation was spent studying what we were going to do, what our offense was going to do, what formations we were going to run certain plays out of. So I knew that so well that when a defense did something, I could react and play. So, how would that show up? What would that look like? How would a team know how much time I spent prepping that way as opposed to watching the opponent's film? So there's just a lot of ways to do it, and I don't know the premise behind why this clause was in there or what the Cardinals didn't see. But the bottom line is you have to get yourself ready to play on Sunday afternoons. Whatever that prep schedule looks like, it looks like. Everybody does put in work, but there was some disconnect there that the Cardinals wanted to see something different. And to me, it sounded like Kyler agreed to whatever different it was. And then you had the press conference.
Well, nobody in my life watches more film that I know of than you. And for your QB Confidential that you do all the time, and also for us on NFL Network, and for you for everything that you do. Any time watching Kyler Murray film, did you get the sneaky suspicion that he wasn't fully prepared? Were you making throws or situations where he didn't look like he's ready to roll?
I mean, I think the bigger, Rich, when I watch film, I'm always breaking down these QBs, and I break them down a lot based on how I played the game, or more specifically, how they play in the pocket. Do they know, what they're looking at? Is their timing good? All of those different things. And so does Kyler have some work to do in that regard? Yeah, he does. I mean, he's a young quarterback that's growing. He's a quarterback that for so long has been able to depend on his physical gifts, whether that be moving or throwing, that I think a lot of times those guys, and again, this isn't a knock on those guys, they get further and further being able to focus on athleticism and making plays. And as no fault of their own, they're not forced to learn how to play the position like a guy like me. That, hey, when I got to whatever stage that was, high school, college, where it's like, I'm not the best athlete on the field. I better figure out how to do this a different way. I'm forced to do some of those things earlier. And so I learned to play the game differently at an earlier stage. Usually the athleticism catches up to guys where at some point they've got to know how to do that to a really high level if they're going to play at the highest level. I think that's something that Kyler's still learning because he's been able to fall back on the athleticism so much throughout his career. And, and again, I'm not just going to put Kyler there because there's a lot of young quarterbacks that are, at the stage going into year 4 that are learning all of those nuances. There are some guys that have been in the league for 10 years that are still getting better at that. And so you could point to some of that stuff and go, well, maybe it's because he's not watching enough film or he's not. I don't know if that's the answer or if it's just a young guy learning how to play the position and having room to grow.
That's a very nuanced answer to a yes or no question. I'll be very honest with you.
Everything I do is nuanced.
No, I know that. But I have sat next to you.
Yes or no question.
I know. I have sat next to you while you were pointing out to me somebody's film work, and I'm not going to say any names, but they're future first ballot Hall of Famers, and you'd say, "What was this guy looking at?" You would say that a lot, and I would never sit there and think that's because they're not studying, and that's why this thing is kind of surprising. And Murray said it himself. Well, if you think I've gotten to this point without having a great work ethic at my body type and my shape and my, level of excellence, then I'll take that as a compliment. So that's why I don't know where this.
Let me say this too, though, Rich. I recall reading this, and if I'm wrong, I'll take ownership of that. But I thought I recalled reading an article that Kyler, did a year ago or so
in the New York Times. Yep.
Yeah, where they were talking about, watching film and how much he studied. And I thought one of his comments was, I don't have to do as much as some other guys because the game kind of just comes natural to me and I just kind of see it. And so, okay, well, that may be true, but maybe things like that lend itself to this kind of clause where, yeah, Kyler's been really good at times in his NFL career. We know that. And there's been other times he's struggled, and especially, in the bigger moments, I should say against some of the better teams, he struggled at times. Maybe that, kind of comment, those kinds of things led to, hey, maybe we can help him take that next step. He's been really good, but let's help him take that next step. And maybe part of it is, the organization saying film study. Film study might help that, so let's put that clause in the contract.